called Broke, which was set in a pawn shop, and it's a little bit of this is in the film, and this is where I met him. So when he became, in a way, for free, the assistant to the pawnbroker and helped him out all the time. So this was about 6 years ago, and then on and off we were doing some filming. So this all happened over a course of a pretty long time, the filming. And so he went through all kinds of things, and I always tried to pitch it on various levels, the story, and then luckily at the end, TVO bought into making this film with them, and which was really great. They are just a fantastic TV station, I think, and they do a good work in supporting independent producers of one-offs and feature documentaries. So they are really good. Because Kristen started to search for his past and why all these things had happened to him, and who his adoptive mother was, and for that reason, and so he wanted to go back to this place in Cold Lake to do some research and to find and to just to understand what happened to him there and why, and this is how he made contact to the Brisebois family, because they were neighbors when he was adopted out there to Cold Lake.
I always wanted to find my family out west. But it's really difficult when you're adopted and they seal your records. So I had to go to the Native Friendship Center, and I remember filling out the application. They were like, well, who's your mother? I'm like, I don't know. Who's your father? I don't know. Where are you from? I think I'm from Manitoba, but for whatever reason I was able to eventually, I don't know how the paperwork went through, but then, it's kind of a complicated story. Then I've been adopted twice, because once just isn't enough. So my biological mother married a white guy who adopted me and the other children that she had, and then he passed away, and that's why I was put up for adoption, because my mother wasn't able to take care of me. But he ended up putting me in his will, and then when I was 21, I had already moved out of my parents' house. I left home at 18, just probably like Chris, but he was maybe 16 anyway. He actually put me in his will. So my parents, which is another crazy story, I finally got the paperwork proving that that was my biological family, and I had 18 brothers and sisters. I was like, oh my God, I come from a humongous family, and I was able to write to every single one of them and explain to them who I am and who my mother was, and if they could help me get my Indian status. And then one of my brothers was like, I used to change your diapers, and I've been wondering where you've been all these years, and that's how I got connected with my biological family, and especially my sister Sonia, because she and I were in the foster home together the longest. We both have the same mother. We have different fathers, but she kind of took care of me. I guess she's 3 years older, and she's sort of like the key to my memories is who this neighbor was with Chris.
Yeah, Chris, I don't know how he did that, but he managed to find out who his mother was. And he found a way that he could look into his adoptive papers, and it was clear in there that they had changed his name. So he had a different name before he was adopted, but he found out about the name he had before, and then he could trace it back to the Okanagan and the West Bank. They're part of the West Bank in BC, but and he got his native status, but he whenever he made contact with them, and he asked them really, could you help me that I learn about my culture and so on. So so they weren't very forthcoming, and he still has to make this trip to eventually meet his mother, and I don't know how this will even be for him, because they don't seem to be very welcoming. So as if they made a deal, yeah. So I don't know. It feels like it even. I may be wrong.
Well, that's what I find with a lot of Native adoptees. When they return to their families, they have really devastating experiences, and they hope that it's going to be great. But I mean, if they're already telling him now that it's not looking too good, at least he has the knowledge not to expect something.
So he's really not doing well. So on one hand, he has arthritis. He's in a lot of pain because because of the abuse. He has a lot of arthritis in his feet and in his back. And but what he does then is, because his welfare, the welfare he gets, is just about matches the rent he has to pay. And in order to have money to buy food, he sells the pain medication on the streets, and to have some money to buy for himself food and for the cat. So and most of the time they live off what he gets from the food bank. And that's pretty much his situation. And so during the film, it seemed that he was doing better, and so on. He did some writing, and if you go to the website, it's called www.antisociallimited.com. So there you can see more videos he has made, and you can find a blog he's writing, and so, and he goes in various directions there. But right now, with all the trouble he has, he's again very, very alienated, and really doesn't distrust the world at all, and it's difficult for me to reach him these days. So whatever I say, it's so he's very distant to it. So it's very, very sad to see. So. Yeah, so we've talked about it a lot. So there's something really complicated, something really multi-layered even with this label. So usually inmates get assessed when they end up for some reason in the federal prison system, right? So they will have an assessment, and I think from some research I saw some stats. I saw about 60% of male inmates in prison will get this label, antisocial personality disorder. In his case, it's even longer, antisocial personality disorder with an impulse control problem and psychopathic traits. So it's not correct to say you are a psychopath. So these are traits you can have, and it is a really damning label. On a lot of ways, not just that you have to live with that, but it's limiting, and this is part of the title too. It's limiting you too, because that you then, if there is an opportunity, and there have been some opportunities for Chris, even in the film, that he could have done this little job there at the lake or so, right? But then because you've got this label, you already think that you can't do this anymore. So it goes in all kinds of directions. And regarding his anger, which is then part of these psychopathic traits he has, and this being so often not willing is not the right word, not being able to see, to understand the emotions other people have around him. Yeah, so certainly that's a problem he has, and he tries to deal with it with playing video games. So whenever he feels this anger, he sits there and plays really violent video games, and it helps him to tunnel it somehow, so that he can live without having to play it out and getting getting into trouble again, because most of the times when he ended up in prison, it was because of assault, and not so much for the really little drug dealing he did with them. So he plays it off like he's this professional and career drug dealer, but far from it. Yeah. So these were really petty crimes, and mostly really on the level of so that it was he only dealt with this hashish and a little bit of dope, so there were no really hard drugs involved, and it was really more the assault, because he couldn't control his anger. Yeah. I think. So he said this sometimes. So it was. I think he said this on Facebook sometimes, that I'm the only person he can trust, so that it's really genuine. Because that's who I am as a filmmaker. I'm just really genuine. I really want to listen. I really wanted to listen to his story and understand who he was and how we could put it together into a film. And this was I assume maybe the very first time that somebody was really willing to listen to it. And there's always this, well, it's not that you listen to it once. I listened to his story for 6 years, again and again and again, because he's traumatized. So for me it was like, for people like Chris, they have this trauma, it sits in front of their eyes. They can't even see beyond it, the opportunities that are there. It's just always there. That's the reality, what happened to them. And I wish people like him would get more tools to just move this out of the way, that they can see something, yeah, this trauma. And I think this film did some of it, that he was able, with telling his story, to move it away. It's still there, but at least it's not just dominating your whole life and how you look at everything around you. And now after the film now has been completed and so on, I think it moved back again, sadly. Yeah. And a promise too, that I've talked to psychiatrists as well, they don't know really how to treat antisocial personality disorder. They feel that they just can't, because they say, well, they don't even want to be treated. So it's a really catch-22 situation for somebody like him. He can't even get the higher social welfare people get, who are in Alberta. It's called assisted living. It's called assistant social health or so. So it's a little bit higher, and it's still below the poverty rate, but at least you have a little bit more money. He can't even get that, because the disorder he has is not recognized there in this program. So, yeah. He's trying a lawsuit there. All these things are very difficult, very expensive. So he's part of, I think, 3 different class action lawsuits, and they're dragging on. They're dragging on for 8, 10 years and forever. And if there will ever be any result to that, I don't know. Well, this is it's the beginning of the 70s, or mid of the 70s, when he was adopted out to Cold Lake. And I don't think that the children's services in Alberta, or maybe in all parts of Canada, didn't care much what happened to the Aboriginal people, the Aboriginal children at that time. So,
yeah, if you read the book by Ernie Cray and Suzanne Fournier, you'll see all the statistics.
Yeah,
They didn't care. They put these children into homes that clearly weren't able to take care of the children. They didn't do background checks. They didn't do cultural sensitivity. They told my parents, yeah, just tell her she's Israeli, she's dark, whatever, don't worry about it. She's never going to care about her culture.
Yeah, and with Chris, he wasn't a problem child, because he acted up then at school, right? So he didn't take it. So then he was the problem. And he was then moved to another school, and he was left in a small room on his own and didn't get the education he deserved. Yeah, because just to get him away from the other children, and so on and so on. So it just continues like this. this question.
I know another Native adoptee that had a similar experience to me, and she actually works for CBC. She's a journalist. She has a couple of shows on APTN, and she actually interviewed me for the Eighth Fire, a documentary by CBC. And when we sat down, talked together, we both had in common our grandmother. So although my parents really didn't care too much about me, my grandmother thought I was fantastic, and she always believed in me.
Yeah.
And I remember there's a line where Chris talks about how everything is so hard. And I remember before she died, she wrote to me, "I know things seem really hard for you now, but it's going to get better, and one day you're going to achieve great things." She saw it in me. I did not see it in me. I thought for sure I'm going to be a drug addict and prostitute, like my parents promised me I always would be. But for whatever reason, because of that relationship, and I guess, I don't know, the spirits are watching me, I was able to walk on a good line, and here I am today. But like I said, there's a couple of us here that are able to have gone through there, but 85%, those are the statistics, the relationship fails, and these people, they end up, in the criminal system, they end up just lost, just not knowing where they belong.
Yeah, and well, so this is a theory that if you have had these half an hour of love in your life, that then you have a chance to rise from the ashes like Phoenix, and everything will be fine. And I think it always sounds nice, and it may make us feel good, but I think so now I would like to share that a little bit. Now, coming from Germany, so I'm a post-war generation German, and I grew up in an environment at school where we were taught that we have to take responsibility for what my parents and grandparents have done, and Holocaust, 2 world wars, so there was a lot to account for, right? And so, and not on the level that you are as guilty as we are, but you have to take a responsibility so that this doesn't happen again. You have to understand the value of democracy. You have to understand the value of treating people equally. You have to understand how important it is to fight racism, how important it is to fight inequality, and to fight for freedom of religion, and so on and so on. And so this is the spirit I grew up in. And and coming here to Canada, I didn't found the spirit here. I don't think, so it's what I had to take on, I was asked to take on something which is called a national shame. And this is the national shame of my people, what my people have done in the 20th century. And they have turned the 20th century into a century of wars and terrible suffering and millions of people dying. And that's something I have to live with, and I try to do it in a very conscious way. I don't find that Canadians are taking on their national shame. And what has happened to the Aboriginal people here, that's your national shame. And and you can make it look like, oh, if I just hold her hands for half an hour and so on, then everything will be good. No, it won't be. And so, and what was done to the Aboriginal people and with the residential schools, and how it's like for me, it's like a miracle that it's in our culture that so much of it still exists. Methodically, they tried to destroy it, and it still exists, so this is amazing. So I have to applaud all the Aboriginal people to that, because I find this really, really, really amazing. And so, and then your people have gone through the residential schools, but what has happened in the residential school, it continues. It doesn't continue in these schools anymore, but there are many dysfunctional, or they're not, that's the wrong word. There are quite a few reserves out there, and their children are still taken away into foster care, sometimes up to 85 or 90%. Just imagine imagine that. So these children, right now, they are not learning what it means to be raised in a family, what all this means. And I think there have to be programs, and there has to be loads of money, if necessary, that goes into it to heal these communities. And if it is with nannies who make sure that in families where the parents maybe suffer from FAS and PTSD because of what they have gone through, that they get the right and have the opportunity to raise their children so that their children will have a memory of what it means to be part of a family. I don't know how much something like this will cost, but I think you should really start working on this and many, many other programs. And I think you don't even learn about your history at school here. There's no history at school. So I don't know, I think there has a lot has to happen there. And so you should, it's great that there's this movement now, Idle No More, and that you finally speak up. And I think you have to be much louder than you are right now. And if you need my voice for it, please do so.
I'm already doing that kind of training at Batshaw right now. I've trained over 900 staff at Batshaw. So yeah, and it's not pretty, the kind of training I do. It's like slap, slap, slap. It's a 4-hour training. But, you know, and what's kind of sad sometimes is I meet social workers later on after they receive the training, and it's kind of like in one ear and out the other. I'm like, didn't I train you? Like, how are you talking to this Aboriginal woman this way when I trained you? But there are some people that do take the information. So I'm very lucky to have the opportunity to go to the youth protection and give them this training. And now I sit on like 2 different committees at the youth protection. So I'm always bringing the issues of our women and the children to the forefront. And I'm pretty loud, and annoying. So I'm always there. Like a stalker. But anyways, but in a good way, because, you know, they need to, you know, they need to hear this, and I have the credibility being the executive director that I can say it. I'm not just Joe Schmo down the street. Anyway, but I used to be Joe Schmo. Anyway.
Yeah, and if a film like this helps, so you can use it anytime, so just give me a call. And so nothing, and this will be distributed for educational release, so that this film will be so it's already used in a lot of schools, and so and certainly it has to be always with guidance. So just to watch a film itself makes you feel something, but then there has to be a follow-up then when it comes to education, that people really understand in which direction it goes and why all this is happening. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, it did happen that we watched some of the footage, and he wouldn't allow anybody emotionally to come close to him. Yeah? So he just said, "Oh, whatever." Yeah? So whatever. So, but it was clear that it was important for him that we make this film, and it was clear that he trusted me in making this film, because whenever we arranged something, mostly via Facebook, to do another filming or to get some heads up what's going on, so he would always be there. So, and to the point that he was already annoyed with us when we were 5 minutes late. Yeah. So, but it was really great. And so sometimes, and it was interesting when we took him to the remand center. So where this old remand center. So it was an interesting experience, because this was a world he really knew. And even though it was full of painful memories for him, he knew this world, and we went in there, and we were totally naive and had no idea what was happening there. And this was maybe the only time he really felt secure and in control of his life, and this is where he shared actually the most with us. So when we were, and that's a sad story in itself, when we were in the remand center, because this was something that where he knew all the rules and he knew how to survive, and so whereas outside in any way, and so he was always the one who was cautious and was thinking that something terrible would happen to him. And I remember the very first times I took him to a restaurant, he was completely freaked out. So and he would sit in the back of a room, and if the waitress just came close to him, he would already be on guard like this. So and would really think that somebody would try to poison him there too. So he had come a long way, and so this was really a revelation to have him there at the Remand Center. Mm-hmm.